Okay, well, if you are on the podcast, you don't know yet.
Oh, because you can't see.
You can't see. Yeah. But if you're watching this on YouTube, you know we have a special guest today.
The man, the myth, the mustache.
The mustache. Joel the Fox Glupker.
The story behind that.
Yeah. All right, well.
You don't want to hear the story behind that, but anyway.
Well, we have, as you know, been using your sermons and making podcasts off of them.
Right.
And so we had just some questions for you about that. How often have you been inspired by our podcast of your sermons? Like, have you man, they just took it to they really took it to the next level.
How often have I been inspired?
Yeah, man,
I can't say that I've listened to all of them. That would be a lie.
Yeah.
Listened to a number of them, and I find it amazing you want to do that.
Yeah.
To do a takeoff.
Yeah.
Of my messages.
Yeah.
So I feel greatly honored, really.
That's good. And how often have you thought, man, they did it better?
Never.
All right. Well, with those kind of
a little warm up,
warm up questions, we'll get into it and we'll take it to the next level.
From the hearts of the Low Country in South Carolina,
it's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level.
So I don't know about you, Michael, but what eventually I want to get to is what's a week look like for Pastor Joel? What goes into preparing a sermon? Maybe before that, for our audience, especially our audience not familiar with Charleston Bible Church.
Because we have listeners. Actually, we look at our listeners. They're in some odd places sometimes, but so there may not be CBC folks.
Yeah.
So we'd like to hear a little bit, maybe like a 2-minute background. Tell us about Pastor Joel. Where do you come from?
Sure. My week as far as preparing for a sermon.
I would love to hear about that, but even before that, tell us a little bit about yourself if people don't know you.
Wow.
That's a big question.
Yeah, well, that's a big question. Raised in a Christian home. Church was central to our family. Made some sort of decision when I was 8 years old. Was baptized later. Went to Michigan State and really came to the conclusion I wasn't really born again. And it was through a conference I had attended, and he talked about having that assurance. And it was after that, between my junior and senior year at Michigan State, that I really looked to the point of my conversion. And my testimony is so common. Mm-hmm. Somebody made a decision when they're younger, and they decide later on, well, yes, it was real, but it needed development. Or for myself, looking at it, say the evidences really weren't there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think that's similar to you in a way.
That's
right,
very
Michael?
similar to me. Yeah, I prayed the prayer when I was maybe 4 or 5, and that was mainly so I could take the Lord's Supper, because at that point in time, if you were saved, we were baptized, you were a member of the church, you could take Lord's Supper. That was I wanted to just be a part of what was going on. I wanted to be a part. And then maybe around 9, I think I got under true conviction. But again, I just think that, my parents were doing the best they could with the tools, and they just pray this prayer again, but it wasn't really meaningful. So it wasn't until I was maybe 17 that I was like, I'm not a believer, and I didn't have that assurance of salvation. I thought if I die, I'm not going to heaven. So yeah.
And so for Michigan,
well, let me throw this out too. Just thinking of how God's worked in my life and coming into ministry. I was thinking this week about, some guys will talk about a call, right? Hey, I had some. And I wouldn't say that's true of my life, that there was this experience and it's kind of like, I need to go into ministry. It was very much coming to faith and desiring to know God's word and pursuing, I think, the gifting God gave me. And out of that, ministry, it just, I don't want to use the word necessarily evolved, but it came about, and I continued to pursue that. And so I would look back and I think in retrospect say, hey, I have been called into this role. But you hear so often folks talking about this call and that, and I don't know if that's a truly biblical idea that everybody should be looking for, some sort of special call.
Yeah, I like that. That fits well with the podcast we recently recorded. I
Yeah.
think that's encouraging and empowering to people in a way, because everyone's like, "Where's my call? Where's the lightning going to strike?"
Sure.
Or
Right.
Yeah. And then even for people using their gift in the church, that encouragement, follow that gifting, pursue that gifting, and see what comes out of it, instead of waiting for some sort of, I've had a call, or No, pursue your gifting.
Ooh, that is some words of wisdom. That's good.
And you mentioned you went to Michigan State. What did you study? What were you studying there at Michigan?
Fisheries and wildlife biology.
Did you got the degree in that?
I did.
Yeah. But have you ever used
So you
it?
ask me about birds or something like that. Yeah, I never used it. Because I came to faith then, my desires changed.
Right.
And so I pursued Bible training. I went to Prairie Bible Institute for a year because the church I was involved in, some of their folks had a strong missions emphasis. Transferred after they had a one-year program for college graduates, finished that up, went to Grand Rapids School of Bible and Music. Missions was my emphasis.
Wow.
And then
Did you plan on being a mission into foreign soil, or just didn't know?
I was just kind of pursuing that. You obviously have to pursue an area of study.
Right.
And after finishing at Grand Rapids School of Bible and Music, went down to Georgia Tech as a campus minister with worldwide discipleship, because that was really my heart. Discipleship and mentoring and those kind of dynamics. Was there for 3 years, met Diana at First Baptist of Atlanta. It's Charles Stanley's church, and spent 3 years there, and then went on to seminary.
Wow.
Very good.
So that's what brought you down Michigan to the south,
Yes.
where it all started, and then
Yeah, in fact, I had a conversation yesterday with a lady, and she talked about being a missionary with a conservative Baptist, and I don't hear that very often. The conservative Baptist, they're a small association, and we moved down to Charleston in '89 to help with the church start, and it was with a conservative Baptist, so we were considered home missionaries.
wow.
Yeah.
And you've been here ever since.
Been here ever
89.
since, and love it.
Oh, that. And then when did you step into Charleston Bible Church?
First church I was at with that church plant, was there about 15 years. And then in 2005, came over here.
That was the fall,
and
right?
really, June of 2005.
Okay. Because you had preached a series of sermons to kind of give Jack and Curtis a break.
Okay,
Oh, maybe it was May.
probably was.
And it was on, you remember what it was on?
golly.
So the parables,
Okay,
parables of Jesus.
I
Yeah,
love
so different parables
I
of
haven't
Jesus.
preached on the parables in
Yeah,
a long time. Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really good, Mike.
Man, this guy does his research.
I just remember.
Do you
I
remember that?
can't. Yeah,
It
I
must
just
have been
remember.
good messages.
Yeah,
I mean,
I
you
thought.
could remember.
Well, really, we were
What
like,
were the applications?
because we had gone to Colorado, we had put out this search, and we're like, oh, there's this guy that's right, like literally 2 miles away from our church. Why are we not calling him? So I think we all had that conversation. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. Well, really great background. Let's get into it. What's
We're
a
not
week?
into it yet.
We'll get into
That's the
nitty-gritty.
introduction. That's good. That's how a message develops.
I've learned well from listening to all these sermons. What's a week look like for Pastor Joel? What's the ebb and flow? Where I know things are not probably stagnant, but I'm just curious. What's life look like?
Mornings are given over to sermon preparation. So I'm usually here by 8, sometimes sooner. And I'll get going right on Monday morning. I'll be here early tomorrow. And I
You don't have a team of writers writing your sermons for you?
No. Should I have? And so I like to start early in the week and have everything perk. It grows. A message grows. You guys know that, teaching or whatever.
Yeah.
And so usually mornings, I'll work on a sermon. Oftentimes have a lunch engagement. I try to, if I can shoot for 6 meetings, I don't know if that sounds like too few or too, but with sermon preparation, and then if I can meet with maybe 6 individuals during the week, and then there may be an elders meeting or a deacons meeting or an outreach meeting or There's these different meetings. So those usually be a meal or in the afternoon, do administrative type of stuff. And then, like this week, I'll probably be out 3-4 evenings, which to me, I don't want to be out more than that, really. If you keep doing that, it's just kind of, this is getting tiresome. So.
Yeah, I don't know how you do as many meetings as you do. I feel like you're in a positive way. You're always meeting with someone. I mean, obviously that lends a hand to how well you shepherd all the people. But everyone's like, "I met Pastor Joel this past week," or it's a common thing.
Right?
Which is that's great. Yeah.
I want to. That's the big part of it. Yeah.
No, that's great. And then thinking of sermon prep, I know it probably ebbs and flows too, but. Do you just couple minutes every morning, look at it, and then throw it together Sunday, or what? What's like the time?
Maybe even not a couple minutes. I mean, I was thinking about how much time I put into a sermon. Probably 15 hours. Maybe it depends if I've worked through a passage. If I'm preaching through a book I've already preached through years ago, I can build off of that. Now, I've never preached through Romans, so I'm preaching through Romans now. And this week we're going to be in Romans 5, which is just an amazing passage, the first part on the benefits of our justification. I've preached that passage more than once, so I can build on that. I can pull up the old sermon. But no, it just continues you work with it, continue to build with it.
And when you're in a passage like that, how much are you dealing with the original languages? So are you looking at the Greek for Romans?
I am, yep. When I went to seminary, and this is the typical course of study, you're going to have both languages, Greek and Hebrew. I did not have Greek before coming into seminary. A lot of guys have in their undergrad. And so they really are throwing it at you. But I would say Greek in seminary was one of my most profitable classes.
Wow.
Because it also taught me about English. I think
Yeah.
we speak the King's English, and we really don't understand the grammar and that sort of stuff. And so when you study a language, you start to work with that. So my first year it was Greek. Second year I think it was Hebrew, and it was just all coming so fast and furious. My Hebrew now is, Greek I work with tools. I'd love to be more proficient with it, but I think I know it well enough. Here, like this week in Romans 5, I've already been looking at it. There's a future tense when it talks about we stand in His grace, a future perfect tense, which means it's a present action with ongoing consequences, which is very significant. See, you're working with the tense of a verb. Sometimes it means a lot, sometimes not that much. So I like to work with the language. And Blue Letter Bible, let's talk about tools.
Yeah.
There you go.
Is really...
It's one that Zach is known, especially in his college class, for pushing Blue Letter Bible.
Yeah.
So, it's good.
Yeah,
that
and
you
so
give that the rip.
you can pull up, it parses the Greek for you. Or you can look at the Greek text. And so it's a great tool.
And I think it comes through in your sermons where you'll break down some of these languages a little bit, but at the same time, you're not like going through a Greek lesson that's either not applicable.
So I should throw out more Greek words?
No, I think you're hitting it right down
My
the middle.
challenge in throwing out the Greek words is, all right, the pronunciation. Do I have this right?
Yeah.
But there are very few that would probably say, I don't think he said that right.
Calling them out.
You just go with it.
Yeah. You always have to,
For your illustrations, and Chris has told me before, he was like, Joel almost always has a story at the beginning, story at the end, and then maybe one or two illustrations in the middle. And Chris, says, I have to have those kind of things to kind of keep me, tuned up to the sermon. Where do you get inspiration for this? Because
besides the paper,
besides newspaper or where
That's
else?
a big one. And I use my family a lot.
Yeah.
I hope I don't use my family too much. And by the way, Danny started out with a great illustration this morning, didn't he?
Yeah.
when he talked about prayer. It's kind of like, yeah, all right. Well, you have everybody's attention. I'm always looking for illustrations, and I pray about illustrations. And then something may happen in my week, and it's like I can use that.
So if something happens.
I love history and pulling things out of history. But there are a lot of resources online. I subscribe to Preaching Today, Sermon Central, and they have, you can just look at illustrations. You can put in the passage, and they have all kinds of illustrations. Yeah.
So if you see something happens, but it's not necessarily applicable to that sermon, do you like file that away or
Still
just
trap.
up here? Okay.
It's a steel trap. To me, illustrations are so important. And yeah, I guess you hear different ideas on the use of illustrations in a message, and some are just so content driven. I don't think most people, you mentioned Chris, I don't think most people hang with you well without somehow bringing them up for a breath of air. And if the illustration clearly, maybe it's good application or it opens up an idea, they're golden. They are golden. I look at Christ's teaching, and he just used stories. Obviously his parables, or he would work with maybe a vineyard in John 15, probably walking as they're going to Gethsemane, seeing a vineyard. You know, he just worked with all of that stuff. And people, they're drawn in by it.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So you're always looking.
Yeah, your sermons are always engaging. Sometimes you're even handing out $20 bills. So I'm always like, maybe he's going to give me 20. I'm ready for it, you know?
We were all cheering Ethan on. A couple like, go get it.
We kind of alluded to it, but maybe we can spend a couple minutes here. You know, how do you have that balance? Family, shepherding the church. You said 3 or 4 times a week. That's like the most you want to be out, because you probably could very easily. You know, it's probably not a challenge to fill all of your nights and all of your days, especially as the church is growing. How do you guard against that, or how do you sense that balance?
And maybe even speak to when Hannah and Nathan were younger.
Because I was going to say, we have seasons in life. And it was Jay Marshall commenting, I believe, about when I came. Hannah was still in the home. Nathan was already out. And so I was at a place in life where I could put a lot of time into ministry. And a guy with family, and if he's got 2, 3, 4 children, he really has to protect that time with his family. Yep. We engaged Nathan and Hannah in ministry. So we worked with kids clubs, I think it was, and they may have been in there, or with youth at the church I was at before. And so if they're a part of what you're doing, just like you, Michael, you had Chloe here yesterday.
Right, yeah.
And if they're involved with you in ministry, well, that's a win-win. But you're constantly, you guys are working with your schedules too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, I don't know that Zach, you and I have that conversation all the time.
All the time.
Don't we?
Yeah.
About, hey, are you too busy? And I ask Leanne, you know, is Zach?
Don't ask Jill. She'll be like, yes, he's too busy.
Yeah, and Michael, you're the same
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
I so appreciate what you guys do. Yeah. So I think, pastor works with it, but I believe really we all do. We struggle with how are we going to prioritize?
You look out probably at I think at people, all sort of people at Charles Bible Church, and a lot of people are running, you know, right at the top.
Yep.
I'm curious, are there any resources that you would recommend? Anything you said, this has been impactful to me, or everyone should read this book or listen to this because it's really a good way to think about things, or you know, something like that?
Yeah. Now, I wish my memory was better, and I could look back and say, oh, this book really impacted my life. Obviously, the Bible.
The book,
the book.
Yeah.
When I was thinking of sermon prep and Bible study, Howard Hendrick's book, Living by the Book, is a great, how do I interpret Scripture? Observation, interpretation, application. Then under that, I've got a lot of Wald's book, The Joy of Discovery. I think when I was at Grand Rapids School of Bible and Music, that may have been the book we used.
Yeah.
One book that is helpful on the creative side is Bruce Wilkinson's 7 Laws of the Learner. And he's just grappling with, the importance of application.
Yeah.
All kinds of ideas. Obviously, the 7 main, don't ask me to
Name
recite the
the
7.
in order.
Oh, that would be really good, in order.
No,
That's a great book.
Yeah, and I've read that book a few years ago, and I could not name them in order, but yeah, he's grappling with communicating well, which speaking of Michael saying your illustrations are great. You're not minimizing Scripture, and then by the same token, I think he says something in there that if you don't have a relationship with your students, they might not be listening,
Sure.
and maybe even when you have some shortcomings, if you know people well and they know you care about them,
Right.
I think that's a lot of the success to your sermons is
Because of all of his shortcomings, we just overlook it.
Is that where you're going with it?
Michael's getting me in trouble. But it's that relational side of things just it feeds each other. It makes your sermon successful. You know what I mean? Because people know you as a person.
Right.
And it kind of comes through in a sermon where it's authentic at the same time.
Yeah.
That's good.
Wilkinson, I don't know why a couple of his ideas really stand out. One is his emphasis on application. And really, as I've gone on in preaching, that area has become more of my focus. I think we've got to walk away. And Danny, at the end, had good application.
Yeah.
And boy, to be, in a sense, with application, you're never going to get away from. You need to pray. You need to be in the Word. Some of those basic ideas, but how can we creatively apply it so that it isn't just, hey, I came, and you hear me praying this all the time. As we leave, that we take it into the week. So he really emphasizes application, and he'll take you like Ephesians, right? First 3 chapters are doctrinal. The last 3 are how do we apply this? Colossians, Romans.
Yeah, like half the book.
That's his big, that's his big
versus
emphasis.
the 5% at the end with a lot of things you hear.
Yeah.
And then another story that from him has really stood out to me was about what you teach or preach. He uses the illustration of a sift and how you may have a bucket of material with different sizes and you throw it on top. Have you heard this?
Mm-mm.
And at the top, it's a bigger grid, and then it gets smaller and smaller. And finally, when you get to the bottom, it's just kind of sand size. And his emphasis is that it's these big pieces on top that you want to preach or teach.
Yeah.
We can get lost as teachers. You guys love to teach, and everything is important. You love everything, but if you try to say everything, you end up saying very little. It has no focus. This has stood with me, and this was years ago. We had a musician come in. He was an aspiring. He played guitar, sang, and he wanted to write. And he said, my problem is I try to say it all in one song. And that has stayed with me. That idea, sometimes we just are trying to say too much, and people walk away, just overwhelmed. It's kind of like, give me the bigger pieces of this. And that would be easy to get lost in Romans. There's so many details.
Right, there are, yeah.
Yeah. It's
very
kinda
deep.
like, and so it's like, what do we want to walk away with?
Speaking of Romans and sermon prep, this just occurred to me when you were talking about how you prepare. But you know your word pretty well. I'd say your general Bible knowledge is good. And if we said a passage, and you would think, okay, if this is the passage I'm preaching from, this is probably what I'm going to be saying. But have you ever, or how often are you in a passage and you're like, well, I wasn't expecting to go this direction, but the more I dug into it, these were the big pieces that were there that I necessarily wasn't even.
Yep. Or sometimes when I may be thinking of, all right, this is a message just for 1 week, you begin to expand it, and it's like, no, this has to have 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a challenge. All right, we joke about Jack White, who before me preached through Romans.
Right.
And I guess he went for a couple of years and he never finished it, did he?
No, I think he got up to like 8 or 9, but it was over, a course of more than 1 year that he was in there. Yeah.
And I think we struggle with, because guys may talk, it took me 7 years to preach through Romans. I'm just picking that number. And it's kind of like, you probably took too long to preach through Romans.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need other biblical material. So I probably will be in Romans a year, but that's a long time. So I don't want to bog down. And honestly, when I think somebody takes that long to go through a book, it's actually they're using a verse as a springboard to go someplace else.
Yeah, right.
It's not like they're focused on the passage. They're going all over.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, when I was younger, we had a pastor who was new to a church that I attended. And his whole time, I think we went through 1 Corinthians, and it was maybe 2.5 years that we were in 1 Corinthians, and then he started 2 Corinthians. I was like, we're never going to get out of Corinthians.
Yeah, I do appreciate you finish, something. You're like, we'll go to the Old Testament for a little bit. We kind of get a good bounce around, versus that situation where 5 years.
I just had us in the Old Testament, right? Because, boy, we'd been in the New Testament for so long, and it's kind of, hey, we don't want to forget the Old Testament. I like to do biographies, right? Didn't we just do Joseph? I've done Moses. I've done David. I like the Psalms.
Abraham, you did too as well, right?
I don't remember Abraham. That must have been a different guy. The guy who did 1 Corinthians. We did the minor prophets.
Yeah, that was really
some of the
great.
minor prophets. Yeah.
I like that. Like the whole counsel of God we're bouncing around. Instead of going through every single psalm, you hit maybe these 6 prominent types of psalms we see, that kind of thing, which is great. I'll go ahead and ask this, and then I don't want to jump too much all over the place, Michael. But I know Michael would probably say the same thing, that I think you're such an encouragement on this body. Everything you give so much. Your sermons are great, very relational. You do your job very well and encourage all of us. What are some things you might say? How can people encourage their pastors better? Is a way I'm thinking too, because it's easy to receive a lot and maybe not even be cognizant. I don't know if you can think of a specific way you felt encouraged, even if it was a unique way or something. I don't know, to get people thinking about where they're at. What's a good way I can encourage my leadership?
Well, it probably doesn't differ than anybody else in the body. I mean, we all need encouragement. Needs maybe a strong word, but I've got a couple letters and notes by the side of my desk. And one of them actually came from a kid at Connect Kids.
Wow.
And, I love you, Pastor Joel.
Oh, yeah.
But notes can be a real encouragement, or a phone call. I think God has really given me a fortitude, a strength, because I wouldn't look at ministry over all the years I've been in it and say, hey, I was ever really discouraged.
Wow, that's great.
Not deeply.
Yeah.
The church I was at before, I'd been there about 15 years, and it was like, hey, it's time for a change. But it wasn't like I'm depressed in ministry. And I remember a story, actually, it was at that other church. There was a guy who had been a pastor and just got ate up by it. And I think he talked about he'd sit in his chair and wake up later, and it's like, wow. He was just depressed.
Yeah.
You saw the movie Unsung Heroes?
Oh, yeah.
A good movie. We went and saw it Friday night.
Yeah.
And that was what happened to the guy. The dad. He got discouraged and he just stayed in bed. I don't know how long he stayed in bed, but he was in a depression. Yeah. And people need encouragement. But God's given me a stamina.
That's good.
That's just real encouragement. And just let me say that ministry, I've always wanted ministry to come out of my life. It's not like, hey, this is a job. When I preach, that's a challenge too. This comes out of my life. I want to live it.
Yeah.
And so, does this sound proud? I believe I have a very vibrant relationship with God, which really sustains me, strengthens me. Yeah.
No, that's great, because when I think of a preaching pastor or a lead pastor that's preaching every single Sunday. I can see why people could get depressed or burn out, or it's like, I'll do a Sunday school and think of all the things I should have said, or the other side of it. I don't know how much you get. I don't know if people ever like, you should have mentioned, or I don't know if people, give feedback on sermons or not, but I can only imagine.
How often do you get feedback?
Not that often.
Yeah. Either positive or negative?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah.
So, I mean, it bleeds through that in your life. Ministry comes out of your life. So I like that. I think it's good for us to be thinking, man, how can we encourage others? And you made a good point. It's not different from anyone else, basically, right? Just doing those small things that can mean a lot. What do you got, Michael?
Well, I thought we might shift gears a little bit. I was going to do, and it was a good thing that you said that you had just met with your brothers and found out maybe you're more German than Dutch, even though you come from Holland,
plot
Michigan.
Twists.
Yeah. So, but I was going to look up a quiz of how Dutch are you, and to ask you some questions, but they were all like, do you ride your bike to work? Like actual Dutch people today. There were none like.
Shoes.
Yeah. Do you wear wooden shoes? So I came up with this quiz about how much of a Michigander are you?
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right.
That's good. Yeah.
All right. So the first question is, what year did Michigan become a state? And I've got options if you need them. Do you
I
want some
need
options?
options.
Okay. And I'll give you a hint. Arkansas was the sister state. I don't know if that helps you, but Arkansas and Michigan, kind of the two states that I hailed from were sister states when they came.
I'll give you a hint. That doesn't help me at all.
All right. 1825, 1855, 1837, or 1815?
The first one was?
25, 55, 37, and 15.
It was before the Civil War. Probably all those dates were. Well, no, the last one maybe wasn't. I'll go with 25.
Oh, 37. 37.
37.
So Michigan, Arkansas was 36. So
Why
if
don't
you
you ask me something like, when is the last time University of Michigan won the national championship?
Okay, that would be good. All right, well, this is on the website, so these aren't mine. So which university is the oldest university in Michigan? And your choices are Davenport, Western Michigan, Michigan State, or University of Michigan. You were a Michigan State guy.
State.
So go Spartans.
You're throwing in Davenport. It's almost like it's got to be some small private school.
This is just a
But
website. I didn't put it
in
in there. Yeah.
I'm going to go with U of M.
U of M. All right, let's see. Oh, yeah, that's correct. That's good.
Nice work.
All right, which food did not originate in Michigan? So I guess all these foods but one originated in Michigan. Wet burritos. Have you ever heard of wet burritos?
Not really.
Okay. Superman ice cream. I will say that I used to go to Metamora, Michigan with my aunt and uncle, and we would get Superman ice cream there when we were on.
Well, that helps me with my
maybe. Maybe that's the wrong one. Bumpy cake and Pringles potato chips. Those are your four. Which one did not originate in Michigan?
The wet burrito.
I mean, that's what I would go to. No. Pringles actually started in Indiana. Yeah, so that was it. All right, which of these names is not a nickname for Michigan? The Great Lakes State, the Mitten State, the Crown of the Midwest, the Auto Capital.
Crown of the Midwest is
All right.
not.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's correct. Good job. What is the name of the Major League Baseball team in Michigan?
Detroit Tigers.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I wasn't even giving you the options on that one. What's the capital of Michigan?
Lansing.
Yeah, there you go. And what Michigan island has banned cars with the exception of select emergency vehicles?
Mackinac Island.
There you go.
Whoa, he
Hey, I'm
truly is
warming
a
up.
Michigander.
Keep them coming.
Wow, he gets fire.
Which of these cities is not a Michigan city? Flint, Cadillac, Pontiac, or Catawamba Island?
Catawamba Island.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. And the oldest settled city in Michigan. So this would be the first settled city in Michigan.
Yeah.
Detroit, Grand Rapids, Sault Ste. Marie, or St. Ignacy.
St. Ignacy.
You think it is? Oh.
Was it?
Says St. Ignacy was settled in 1668, which makes it the first. Incorrect.
By the
Oh,
French,
Sault
but-
Ste. Marie was the first, 1668.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe it was French. Maybe. Which cereal was born in Battle Creek, Michigan?
Kellogg's.
Wow.
Well, this is specific. Lucky Charms, Corn Flakes, Cocoa Puffs, and Cookie Crisps.
Cornflakes.
Cornflakes. Yeah,
No
that's
hesitation.
it. There you go.
Knew
All right, 8 out of 10. That's pretty good, Joel. That's pretty.
Did I do that?
Yeah,
8
yeah.
out of 10?
yeah,
But
pretty
that's
good.
not the most important question. Michael wrote down the most important question.
This
I'll let
last
him.
one.
It's his question.
Okay,
So
yeah.
I'll
This
let
is
him-
about the romance that some people have, and it was like, when did you fall in love with hot dogs?
I've always had a special relationship with hot dogs.
Now, did you eat? Sorry for this to be Michigan exclusive, but did you eat Coney dogs up in Holland? Did they have those?
They probably had them. I don't like Coney dogs.
Oh, so you're aware of them?
Yeah, it's the on a stick, the hot dog.
Well, these were had like this certain chili on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the one on a stick?
a corn? I mean,
Corn dog.
Corn dog. Yeah.
You're right, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't care to put chili on my hot dog.
Yeah. So
You know, I'm a purist. I mean, just the hot dog.
just the hot dog,
Smothered
some
with
ketchup.
onions.
Yeah. I remember being a young boy because I have family up in Michigan, was born there, and we would go back, and my parents were raving about these Coney dogs, and I was like, okay, they must be the best thing. It was like, the buildup was so much that, and as a young boy, it didn't really deliver. But I guess they're really big around Flint and in that
the
area.
east side of the state,
Yeah. Well, did you have anything else?
I don't think I can top the hot dog question of the Michigan quiz. I think that was, outstanding. I don't have any questions. I appreciate you, Pastor Joel, for all you do and for
we
taking
do.
time, being the
We really
very
do.
first
Man,
guest.
I came up here with notes.
Well,
You guys
he's
got to keep
prepped.
asking questions.
Well, what else
I'm
would you want to
kidding,
say?
I'm kidding.
Yeah, do you have anything else you'd like to share?
Well, it was encouraging when you asked me to do this, in the sense that, and it was encouraging you asked me to do it, and then it really did get me to thinking about what I do and the different aspects. Because you kind of do something and you don't think of all the details that are a part of it until something like this. All right, what questions are you going to ask? And, is it going to be about how do you study your Bible, or how do you put together a sermon, or so all those kind of ideas. It was encouraging to think of those things.
That's great. You set.
So here you go. You guys were such an encouragement to me.
Well,
Good.
encouraging all around. First guest ever on the Take Two podcast that'll go down in the history books.
All right. Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure.
And I want you to know how much I appreciate the two of you.
Well, thank you. Thanks.
I think Pastor Joel should say our sign off phrase. I don't know
Right.
about you, Michael.
Right, that's good. But do you know our sign-off phrase?
Show me. I need something about take two.
Yeah, that's it.
You're on the right track.
Yeah. That's our take. So you can just look at
Oh,
the
that's
cameras.
our take.
That's our take.
That's our take.
Thanks for listening to Take Two. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.